Have you ever noticed how the moment you decide to focus, truly focus, not pretend to, but actually stay with one thing, something inside you begins to resist almost immediately? Not loudly, not aggressively, but in a quiet, persistent way, like an inner current pulling you away from the very place you chose to stand. You sit down with intention, convinced that this time will be different, that this time you will stay, and yet within minutes, your attention loosens its grip. Your thoughts drift, your body remains still, but your inner life starts moving restlessly, searching for an exit. And you don't always realize when it happens. You simply wake up somewhere else, in another thought, another tab, another distraction, wondering how your focus slipped away again.
You've been told that this means you lack discipline, that your will is weak, that you've somehow failed at self-control. But what if this interpretation is wrong? What if your inability to focus is not a personal flaw, but a psychological signal? Because focus is not something you manufacture through force. It is something that emerges naturally when your inner world is not split against itself. And right now, whether you admit it or not, there is a split inside you. On one side, there is a part of you that wants depth. It wants continuity, meaning, direction. It wants to stay with one thought long enough for it to become insight, one task long enough for it to become creation. This part knows that your life is shaped not by what you intend, but by what you consistently attend to. It senses that something essential is being lost in the constant fragmentation of your attention. But there is another part of you, older, more instinctive, that has learned to survive through movement, through stimulation, through constant interruption. This part does not trust stillness. It associates silence with danger, with exposure, with emotions that were never fully processed. And so every time you try to focus, this part intervenes. This is not sabotage out of malice. It is protection born from fear. Fear of what might surface if you stay. Fear of what you might feel if there is no distraction to buffer you from yourself. Fear of discovering that something in your life is deeply misaligned. And so your attention is pulled away again and again, not because you are incapable, but because part of you believes that remaining present is unsafe. This is the inner war no one prepares you for. The war between the conscious mind that seeks order and the deeper layers of the psyche that refuse to be ignored. And the modern world does not help you resolve this conflict. It intensifies it. Endless notifications, endless content, endless noise keep the impulsive side of your mind constantly occupied. They offer relief without resolution. They soothe the tension without ever addressing its source. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your capacity for sustained attention weakens. Not because you lost it, but because it was never allowed to rest in stillness long enough to grow strong. Carl Jung understood that the psyche is an energy system. Attention is not neutral. Wherever your attention goes, your psychic energy follows. When that energy is constantly pulled outward, fractured into dozens of directions, you begin to feel depleted without knowing why. You feel tired even when you have done nothing, restless even when nothing demands you. This is not physical exhaustion. It is inner exhaustion, the kind that comes from living in a constant state of internal tension. Every time you try to force focus without addressing this tension, the conflict deepens. because the psyche does not respond to pressure the way a machine does. The more you try to dominate it, the more it resists. This is why routines collapse, why motivation fades, why discipline feels brittle and short-lived. You are trying to command an inner system that does not recognize your authority because you have not yet established it from within. Distraction, then, is not random. It is meaningful. It appears precisely where something inside you refuses to comply blindly. When you lose focus, when you escape into stimulation, you are not being careless. You are responding to an inner signal. Unprocessed emotions, unresolved conflicts, suppressed desires, unacknowledged fears do not disappear when ignored. They wait. And when you attempt to be still, when you try to concentrate, they rise to the surface. Distraction becomes the escape hatch, not because you do not care, but because caring would require you to face what you have been avoiding. This is why silence feels so uncomfortable. In silence, there is no anesthetic, no external object to absorb your attention, no noise to dissolve the tension. Silence confronts you with yourself, and the longer you have avoided this confrontation, the more threatening it feels. Focus demands presence. Presence demands honesty. And honesty can be unsettling when you have built your life around staying busy enough not to feel. You cannot focus while wearing a persona that drains you. You cannot sustain attention while living according to expectations that are not your own. The mind rebels against inauthenticity. It rebels quietly, persistently, through distraction. Your inability to concentrate is not a defect. It is a protest, a signal that something in your inner life is being neglected, silenced, or sacrificed. Most people never stop long enough to listen to this signal. They blame themselves instead. They push harder. They add more pressure. They treat focus as a moral obligation rather than a psychological state. But pressure only strengthens resistance, and the war inside you continues, unresolved, draining your energy day after day. And yet, beneath all of this, there is something important to understand. Your attention has not disappeared. It has not been destroyed. It has been divided, split between parts of you that want different things and have never been brought into dialogue. And until that dialogue begins, focus will continue to slip away, not as punishment, but as protection. Because the psyche will always choose survival over productivity, safety over depth, relief over truth. And until you recognize this, you will keep fighting the wrong battle. You will keep trying to discipline what actually needs to be understood, to control what is asking to be integrated, to silence what is demanding to be heard. There comes a moment, usually after long frustration, when you begin to sense that the problem is not that you cannot focus, but that you no longer trust yourself enough to stay. You have overridden your own limits too many times. You have forced yourself through days that felt empty, obligations that felt false, rhythms that were never yours. And slowly, the inner agreement dissolved. The psyche learned that your conscious intentions do not necessarily serve its well-being. So it withdrew cooperation, quietly, subtly, through distraction. This is the moment where the direction must change, not outward, but inward. Because focus cannot be recovered by adding more structure on top of inner chaos. It returns only when inner authority is restored. And authority does not come from domination. It comes from alignment. From the slow rebuilding of trust between who you think you are and who you actually are beneath the persona. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as a path that inevitably leads through inner conflict, solitude, and confrontation with the shadow, not as punishment, but as necessity. Because what you refuse to look at controls you, and what you integrate loses its power to sabotage you. Your lack of focus is one of these shadow expressions. It is the psyche's way of saying that something essential has been postponed for too long. This is why silence is not optional on this path. Silence is the threshold, the place where distraction loses its camouflage and reveals its true function. When you stop filling every moment, when you resist the urge to immediately reach for stimulation, something uncomfortable happens. Thoughts emerge that were never finished. Emotions surface that were never felt through. Questions arise that were never answered honestly. This is not regression. It is return. At first, this return feels like loss. You feel slower, more exposed, less entertained. But slowly, something else begins to happen. The inner noise starts to organize itself. The constant pull toward escape weakens. Not because you forbid it, but because it is no longer needed to protect you from yourself. The psyche senses that you are finally willing to listen, and listening changes everything. When you allow yourself to feel boredom without fleeing, boredom transforms into curiosity. When you allow yourself to feel anxiety without numbing it, anxiety reveals what matters. When you allow yourself to feel resistance without forcing compliance, resistance points toward misalignment. Focus does not arrive as a command. It emerges as a consequence of honesty. You begin to notice that attention behaves differently when your actions reflect your values. When you choose fewer things, but choose them consciously. When you stop betraying yourself in small, habitual ways. When you respect your own limits instead of overriding them. Attention, after all, is not infinite. It deepens where it feels safe, where it feels respected, where it feels meaningful. This is the quiet transformation most people never experience because it cannot be rushed. It cannot be optimized. It cannot be turned into a technique. It requires patience in a world addicted to speed, depth in a culture obsessed with surface, and courage in a system that rewards constant reaction. But those who endure this process discover something that changes the way they move through life. Focus stops being a struggle. It becomes a state of presence that arises naturally when the inner war loses its fuel. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are no longer dragging your attention back by force. You are staying because you want to, because something inside you finally agrees to be there. And when attention wanders, as it sometimes will, you no longer attack yourself for it. You observe. You ask what has shifted. You listen. And in listening, you maintain inner authority. This is what reclaiming focus truly means. Not sharpening your will, but reconciling your inner life. Not demanding obedience, but restoring trust. Not silencing distraction, but understanding why it existed in the first place. Because what was once scattered was never broken. It was simply divided by neglect. And when division gives way to integration, something subtle but profound takes place. You begin to inhabit your own mind again. Thoughts slow down without effort. Attention settles without strain. Presence replaces urgency. You are no longer trying to escape the moment you are in. You are capable of staying. Not because the world became quieter. Not because distractions disappeared. But because the inner conflict that made escape necessary has finally begun to dissolve. And in that quiet resolution, focus returns not as a demand, but as a natural expression of wholeness,